I'm Olivia Bennett, 31, and I've spent my whole life being the family disappointment. No matter how hard I tried, I was never good enough for my father's impossible standards. Last summer, at our annual family reunion, my dad looked around. The table filled with relatives and said those words I'll never forget. I'm proud of all my children, except the loser. What I did afterward changed everything, not just for me, but for my entire family. Before I share my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below, and hit that subscribe button to see how I turned the greatest humiliation of my life into my ultimate triumph. Growing up in Wellesley, Massachusetts, our family appeared picture-perfect from the outside. Our colonial-style home sat on a tree-lined street in one of Boston's most prestigious suburbs, where success wasn't just expected, it was demanded. My father, William Bennett, built his financial consulting firm from scratch, turning it into a regional powerhouse through sheer determination and what he called excellence without excuses. His company portrait hung in our foyer, his stern expression a daily reminder of the standards we were expected to uphold. Mom, Caroline, came from old money and old habits, maintaining peace at all costs, even when that peace was an illusion. She floated through our home like a beautiful ghost, arranging flowers and hosting dinner parties while carefully avoiding any confrontation with my father. I learned early that she wouldn't defend me against his criticism. Her strategy was redirection, changing subjects when tensions rose, offering dessert when tears threatened to fall. My older brother Marcus was everything my father wanted in an heir: analytical, ambitious, and unemotional. By 34, he'd completed medical school at Johns Hopkins and become the youngest cardiac surgeon at Boston Memorial. My younger sister Vanessa, 28 and razor sharp, graduated top of her class from Harvard Law and joined a prestigious firm specializing in corporate law. They fit perfectly into the Bennett success template. Then there was me, the middle child, with an imagination that wouldn't quit and sensitivity that wouldn't hide. While Marcus dissected frogs, I wrote poems about them. When Vanessa memorized legal precedents, I painted murals on my bedroom wall. My creative temperament was like a foreign language in our household of pragmatists and overachievers. I still remember my 11th grade art project winning the state competition, a mixed media piece about environmental destruction that earned me a feature in the local newspaper. The ceremony conflicted with Marcus's regional science fair, so my parents attended his event instead. I stood alone accepting my award, my art teacher's hand on my shoulder substituting for my family's presence. That night, I overheard Dad telling Mom, "Art competitions are just participation trophies, Caroline. Marcus is doing real work that matters." By senior year, I'd given up trying to make him see value in my creativity. When college applications came around, I applied to journalism programs despite Dad's insistence on law or medicine. The night I received my acceptance to Northwestern's prestigious journalism school, Dad barely looked up from his Wall Street Journal. "Journalists are just failed writers who ask questions for a living," he said, sipping his scotch. "But I suppose someone has to do it." I moved to Chicago immediately after graduation, telling myself the distance was for career opportunities, but knowing in my heart it was survival. For 8 years, I limited my family interactions to brief phone calls on holidays and obligatory appearances at major events. Each visit home left me smaller somehow, as though the house itself contained some shrinking magic that reduced me to my childhood self, insecure, unseen, and unworthy. Chicago became my sanctuary, a place where nobody knew me as the disappointing Bennett child. I carved out a niche in digital media, working my way up from fact-checker to feature writer at the Midwest Voice, an online publication focused on social justice issues and community reporting. My series on educational inequality in Chicago's public school system gained traction, earning industry recognition and a loyal readership. For the first time, I felt valued for my perspective rather than punished for it. My apartment in Wicker Park became home in ways my childhood house never was. Walls covered with local art, bookshelves overflowing with poetry and photography collections, and a desk positioned perfectly by the window where I could watch the city pulse below as I wrote. I found my people too. Maya, a fiercely loyal photographer whose honesty never wavered. Darren, a community organizer who taught me about authentic advocacy. And Layla, whose bakery beneath my apartment supplied both incredible sourdough and late-night conversations about life's big questions. Then Alex entered my world at a fundraiser for youth literacy. Tall and thoughtful with a laugh that made everyone in the room feel included. Our relationship developed slowly and deliberately, built on mutual respect and genuine interest in each other's work. Alex as an architectural designer specializing in community spaces, me with my words and stories. Despite this new life I'd built, imposter syndrome followed me like a shadow. Each professional success came with a whisper in my father's voice. Anyone can write stories, Olivia. It's not like you're saving lives like your brother. When my educational inequality series was nominated for a regional journalism award, I almost didn't attend the ceremony, convinced I didn't belong among real journalists. Alex helped me pick out a dress and held my hand throughout the event, squeezing it tight when my name wasn't called as winner. "You'll get the next one," Alex whispered. "Your work matters." When the invitation arrived for the annual Bennett family reunion, my initial instinct was to ignore it as I had the previous year. But something felt different this time. The education series had gained national attention, even being cited by a state senator advocating for school funding reform. For once, I had tangible proof of my work's impact. Maybe, just maybe, this would be enough to earn a nod of approval from William Bennett. I spent hours selecting the perfect outfit, professional but not trying too hard, a midnight blue dress that projected confidence without flashiness. Alex drove me to the airport, offering to come along for moral support. But this was a battle I needed to face alone. "Just remember who you are now," Alex said, kissing me goodbye. "Not who they think you are." The Massachusetts air felt different from Chicago's. Cleaner, crisper, heavy with memories. The taxi wound through familiar streets until the Bennett family estate appeared, its colonial columns and manicured lawn unchanged despite the years. Uncle Richard spotted me first as I paid the driver, rushing over with genuine warmth. "There's our wordsmith," he boomed, embracing me in a bear hug that smelled of expensive cologne and whiskey. Aunt Patricia followed, commenting on my professional city look with approval. Cousins and extended family members greeted me with varying degrees of interest, some asking about my work in Chicago, others merely nodding before returning to their conversations. Mom emerged from the house looking thinner than I remembered, her smile tight as she embraced me. "You look well, dear," she said, studying my face. "The city agrees with you." I searched for authentic connection in her eyes, but found only her usual polite distance. Inside, Marcus held court in the living room, detailing a complicated surgery to an enraptured audience that included my father. Vanessa perched nearby, occasionally interjecting with legal perspectives on medical malpractice. I stood in the doorway, overnight bag still in hand, waiting to be acknowledged. Dad finally glanced up, giving me a cursory nod. "Olivia's here," he announced flatly before immediately turning back to Marcus. "Now, continue about the aortic valve replacement." Later, retrieving a drink from the kitchen, I overheard Dad talking to Uncle Richard. "Vanessa just made partner, youngest in the firm's history, and Marcus is publishing in the New England Journal of Medicine next month." Uncle Richard asked, "And Olivia? I hear she's doing well in journalism." My father's response cut through me like glass. "She writes for some online blog. Not exactly the Washington Post, but she seems content with mediocrity." I gripped my water glass so tightly I feared it might shatter, breathing deeply to maintain composure. The familiar feeling of invisibility settled over me like an old, unwelcome coat. Dinner that evening was an elaborate affair, served in the formal dining room that had always intimidated me as a child. Crystal glasses caught the light from the chandelier, casting rainbow prisms across the imported tablecloth as 23. Family members settled around the massive mahogany table. Grandmother Bennett sat at one end, her 92 years evident in her fragile frame, but not in her sharp eyes that missed nothing. Dad commanded the other end, Mom to his right, each of them playing their roles to perfection in this family. Theater. The housekeepers brought out course after course while conversations ebbed and flowed around business ventures, medical breakthroughs, and legal strategies. I picked at my roasted duck, feeling increasingly out of place among discussions, where I had nothing to contribute. After the main course, Dad stood with wineglass in hand, commanding attention without effort. "A toast to the Bennett family legacy," he began, his voice resonating with pride. "To Marcus, whose revolutionary approach to minimally invasive cardiac procedures is saving lives across New England." Glasses raised as Marcus nodded modestly. "And to Vanessa, whose legal brilliance has earned her the youngest partnership at Caldwell and Schmidt in their 80-year history." More approving murmurs and raised glasses followed. I waited for my name, for some acknowledgement of my work. But Dad simply continued to family announcements about cousins' engagements and business expansions. As glasses clinked and conversation resumed, Mom caught my eye briefly, a flicker of discomfort crossing her face before she turned to compliment Aunt Patricia on her new pearl necklace. My youngest cousin Zach, still in college and therefore lowest in the Bennett hierarchy of achievement, leaned toward me from across the table. "Hey, Olivia, I read your series on Chicago's school inequality. My sociology professor actually assigned it to our class. It was powerful stuff." The unexpected recognition caught me off guard, warmth spreading through my chest. "That's really nice to hear, Zach. Educational advocacy is something I'm passionate about." I didn't notice the table quieting or my father's attention shifting our way. The series actually led to some policy changes in district funding distribution, which was the goal all along. Dad's voice cut through the moment like a blade. "Online blogs aren't exactly journalism, Zach. Real journalists work for established publications with editorial standards." The table fell uncomfortably silent. "Actually, Dad," I began, straightening my shoulders, "the Midwest Voice has won several national awards for investigative journalism. Our editorial team includes former reporters from the Tribune and Sun-Times." I tried explaining how my series had been cited in legislative sessions and education panels, how the interactive data visualization components had broken new ground in digital storytelling. Dad lifted his hand, cutting me off mid-sentence. "Speaking of real achievements, did everyone hear about Marcus's fellowship offer?" Just like that, I was erased from the conversation, my voice silenced as effectively as if he'd placed his hand over my mouth. Excusing myself after dessert, I retreated to my old bedroom, now converted to a guest room with no trace of my existence. The walls once covered with my artwork and photography were now painted a neutral beige, adorned with generic landscapes. I sat on the unfamiliar bedspread, my hands trembling slightly as I scrolled through work emails on my phone, seeking connection. To my real life in Chicago, a text from Alex appeared. "How's it going with the Bennett Royal Court? Remember, you're amazing regardless of their validation." Tears threatened, but I blinked them back, unwilling to give my father the satisfaction of making me cry again, even in private. Looking around the sanitized room, I realized how thoroughly I'd been removed from family narrative, my creative chaos replaced by acceptable blandness. I set my alarm early, planning to catch the first flight back to Chicago tomorrow. One more breakfast, one more performance of family unity, and I could escape back to people who actually saw me. I lay awake most of the night, replaying dinner conversations and imagining all the things I should have said in my defense. By morning, exhaustion had settled into my bones, but I applied makeup carefully, dressed in my most professional outfit, and descended to face the final act of the Bennett family reunion. The final gathering took place on the stone patio overlooking the immaculately landscaped backyard, where generations of Bennets had celebrated milestones beneath the ancient oak tree. Brunch was an elaborate spread of smoked salmon, quiches, fresh fruit, and pastries from the French bakery in town that catered all our family events. I sipped my coffee silently, nodding at appropriate intervals during conversations about stock portfolios and vacation properties, topics that highlighted the wealth disparity between my life and theirs. Grandmother Bennet, wrapped in a cashmere shawl despite the summer warmth, launched into her favorite topic, family legacy. The Bennet name has stood for excellence for 4 generations, she reminded everyone, her frail voice somehow still commanding. Each of you carries that responsibility. Dad nodded solemnly, moving to stand at the head of the table with mimosa in hand. Speaking of legacy, he began, Caroline and I have some announcements regarding family planning. First came news about establishing a college fund for cousin Jennifer's newborn, followed by revealing plans for a generous donation to Marcus's hospital to establish a cardiothoracic research division. The Bennet family has always prioritized education and achievement, Dad continued, smiling proudly at Marcus and Vanessa. Which brings me to our most significant announcement. He cleared his throat, standing taller as he prepared to deliver his news. After much consideration, I've decided to establish the Bennet Family Foundation, focusing on supporting educational and medical initiatives. Appreciative murmurs circulated around the table as he explained the foundation's structure. The foundation will be guided by a board comprising family members who exemplify the Bennet standards of excellence and achievement. His gaze swept deliberately past me to rest on my siblings. Marcus will head the medical grant division, while Vanessa will handle legal oversight and compliance. Mom smiled tightly from her seat, nodding in practiced support. This foundation is my legacy, Dad continued, his voice swelling with pride. A way to extend the Bennet family influence through the accomplishments of my children. He raised his glass higher, his expression solemn, yet satisfied. I'm proud of all my children, except the loser. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap before absolute silence descended over the gathering. Every eye turned toward me, expressions ranging from shock to discomfort to pity. Aunt Patricia's fork clattered against her plate. Uncle Richard studied his mimosa intensely. Cousin Jennifer covered her mouth with her napkin. Mom looked physically ill, her complexion ashen as she stared at her lap. Marcus and Vanessa exchanged uncomfortable glances but remained silent, their complicity speaking volumes. I felt a curious sensation in that moment, not the crushing pain I might have expected, but rather a crystalline clarity that seemed to slow time itself. The decades of diminishment, of conditional love, of striving for approval that would never come, all compressed into this single illuminating moment of truth. For the first time, I saw our family dynamic with perfect clarity, stripped of illusion and justification. Placing my napkin beside my plate, I rose from my chair with deliberate calm. Instead of the tears or outburst everyone clearly expected, I smiled. A genuine smile that reflected not happiness but liberation. Without a word, I turned and walked unhurriedly through the French doors into the house, leaving stunned silence behind me. No one called after me. No one followed. No one defended me. In my guest room, I packed methodically, folding clothes with unusual precision. My hands should have been shaking, but they moved with surprising steadiness as I zipped my overnight bag and gathered my laptop. I glanced once around the beige room that had erased my existence, feeling nothing but certainty about what needed to happen next. The family remained on the patio, conversations having resumed in awkward, hushed tones as I descended the stairs. I placed the house key on the marble entryway table, beneath the intimidating portrait of my father that had watched my comings and goings for decades. For the first time, his stern expression didn't diminish me. Walking to my rental car, I felt lighter with each step, as though shedding invisible weights I'd carried since childhood. As I pulled away from the Bennet estate, I didn't look in the rearview mirror. Some views are better left behind. The drive from Massachusetts to Chicago would have taken 13 hours without stops, but I chose the longer route, needing the solitude of the open road to process what had happened. Somewhere in Pennsylvania, I pulled over at a roadside diner and called Maya, my hands finally beginning to tremble as the adrenaline wore off. He called me a loser, Maya, in front of everyone. Not indirectly or implied. He actually used the word loser while talking about his legacy. Maya's outrage flowed through the phone, fierce and protective, offering creative suggestions about what William Bennett could do with his foundation and legacy. Her loyalty warmed me, but beneath her righteous anger was genuine concern. Liv, this is beyond normal family dysfunction. Have you considered talking to someone professional about this? The idea had never occurred to me. In the Bennett household, therapy was viewed as weakness, something for people without the internal fortitude to solve their own problems. But Maya's suggestion resonated in unexpected ways. 3 days after. Returning to Chicago, I sat in Dr. Rivera's office, a warm space with muted colors and comfortable furniture that bore no resemblance to the intimidating formality of my childhood home. "Tell me about your family," she invited, her expression open and non-judgmental. Words poured out of me for the full hour, continuing into weekly sessions that became my anchor. Dr. Rivera introduced terms I'd never considered applying to my family: emotional abuse, narcissistic parenting, scapegoating, golden child dynamics. "The family system you're describing operates on conditional love and comparative value," she explained during our 4th session. "Your worth was assessed based on adherence to your father's narrow definition of success, not on your inherent value as a person." These concepts illuminated patterns I'd felt but never named, validating experiences I'd been gaslighted into, doubting. Following Dr. Rivera's guidance, I made the difficult decision to establish a complete boundary with my family. No calls, no texts, no emails. Each therapy session strengthened my resolve as I redirected energy previously spent seeking paternal approval into my journalism career. The decision to step back from family contact coincided with an intriguing tip from a source about corporate malfeasance in the healthcare industry. As I began preliminary research, a sickening realization formed. Several described practices matched strategies I'd overheard my father discussing at family gatherings over the years. His financial consulting firm advised many healthcare corporations, including several named by my source. Ethical alarms blared in my mind. Pursuing this story would inevitably connect to my father's business practices. I scheduled an emergency meeting with my editor, Jordan, a veteran journalist whose ethical compass I trusted implicitly. "I need to recuse myself from this healthcare corruption story," I explained, outlining the conflict of interest. "But I believe it's important enough to assign to someone else." Jordan listened intently, his expression growing more serious as I shared details from my source. "This is potentially explosive, Olivia. Are you absolutely certain you want to step away?" I nodded firmly. "Journalistic ethics demand it, but I know exactly who should take it. Jackson has the investigative background and healthcare knowledge to do it justice." That afternoon, I briefed Jackson, transferring my notes and source contacts while carefully explaining that I couldn't reveal why I was recusing myself beyond citing a personal connection that created a conflict of interest. His eyes widened as he reviewed the preliminary evidence. "This is major, Bennett, potentially Pulitzer territory if it all checks out." While Jackson began the investigation, I threw myself into therapy and self-discovery. Dr. Rivera guided me through exercises to identify my intrinsic value separate from achievements or family validation. "Your father constructed a reality where worth equals specific forms of success," she explained. "But that's his distorted perception, not universal truth." For the first time, I began recognizing my talents without automatically diminishing them through my father's lens. My writing wasn't just stories, but powerful advocacy that amplified marginalized voices. My sensitivity wasn't weakness, but the source of my empathy and perceptiveness. Alex became an unexpected pillar during this time, offering steadfast support without pressuring me for details I wasn't ready to share. Our relationship deepened as I gradually revealed my family history and ongoing therapy journey. "I've always seen your strength," Alex told me one evening as we walked along Lake Michigan. "But watching you reclaim your narrative is incredible." 6 months passed without family contact, though notifications occasionally appeared. Text messages from Mom asking if I was still in a mood, an email from Vanessa about Grandmother Bennett's birthday celebration, a formal invitation to a charity gala hosted by my father's firm. Each triggered momentary guilt, but therapy had equipped me to recognize these as attempts to pull me back into the dysfunctional system without acknowledging the harm done. Instead of responding, I would schedule an extra therapy session or meet Maya for coffee, surrounding myself with genuine support rather than conditional acceptance. Meanwhile, Jackson's investigation gathered momentum, expanding beyond the initial tip into a comprehensive examination of systematic billing fraud and patient care shortcuts across multiple healthcare corporations, consulting with my father's firm. Though I maintained appropriate distance from the investigation, Jordan kept me generally informed about its progress, unaware of exactly how personal this story truly was. "Jackson's uncovered some serious impropriety," he mentioned during an editorial meeting. "The connections lead straight to some major consulting firms that orchestrated these practices." I nodded professionally while my stomach tightened, knowing what was coming next. By month 7 of my family disconnection, I had developed new routines centered on authentic self-care rather than achievement. Morning journaling replaced frantic email checking. Weekend art classes reconnected me with creative expression abandoned in adolescence. Regular dinners with friends substituted for the performative family gatherings of my past. Most importantly, I learned to silence the internal critical voice that spoke in my father's tone, replacing it with self-compassion and realistic assessment of my strengths and challenges. The day Jackson's investigation was scheduled for final editorial review before publication, his excitement was palpable. "Bennett, we got them. Documented evidence of systematic fraud, internal communications encouraging medical billing manipulation, and 3 whistleblowers willing to go on record." I maintained my professional demeanor despite my racing heart. "That's excellent work, Jackson. This story will help countless patients." That evening, for the first time since the family reunion, my mother called instead of texting. I stared at her name on my phone screen, thumb hovering over the accept button before finally answering. "Olivia, are you there?" Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered. "Yes, Mom. I'm here." A pause followed, filled with unspoken history. "Your father's 60th birthday celebration is next month. The whole family will attend. It would look strange if you're not there." No mention of the horrible reunion incident. No acknowledgement of my absence from family communication for over half a year. Just concern about appearances. "I won't be attending, Mom." Firmness had replaced the apologetic tone I would have used before therapy. "But people will talk," she protested, anxiety elevating her pitch. "They'll wonder why you're not there." "Let them wonder." My response was calm but unyielding. "I need to go now." After ending the call, I reached for my journal rather than a glass of wine, documenting my feelings instead of numbing them. The following morning, Jackson's investigation published as the lead story, complete with detailed infographics and case studies demonstrating how my father's consulting firm had engineered healthcare fraud systems that prioritized profit over patient care. Though my father wasn't named personally, his company featured prominently, with substantial documentation proving executive knowledge of fraudulent practices. By noon, business news channels were covering the story. By evening, the company's stock had dropped 15%. At 9 that night, my phone rang with Vanessa's name displayed, the first direct contact from my sister in 7 months. "What the hell did you do?" she demanded without greeting. "Do you have any idea what's happening here?" I remained silent, letting her continue. "Dad's company is in free fall. There's talk of federal investigations. Marcus had to leave surgery when the hospital board called an emergency meeting about their relationship with the firm." Her voice cracked with stress. "Did you plant this story? Is this revenge for what Dad said?" The old Olivia would have apologized, explained, justified. The new Olivia recognized manipulation. "I didn't write the story, Vanessa. I recused myself due to family connection." "But you knew about it. You could have warned us." The entitlement in her assumptions stunned me. That would have been journalistic malpractice and potentially illegal obstruction. Her bitter laugh held no humor. "Always the moral high ground while you destroy this family. Don't expect to be welcomed back after this." The call ended abruptly, leaving me shaken but resolute. I hadn't engineered this situation. I'd merely stepped aside and allowed truth to emerge unimpeded by family loyalty. That night, I dreamed of the Bennett estate shrinking smaller and smaller until it fit inside a snow globe that I placed gently on a shelf before walking away into sunshine. Jackson's exposé became the journalism event of the year, expanding into a 12-part series as new whistleblowers came forward with additional evidence. Healthcare corporations began internal reviews, boards demanded resignations, and preliminary investigations were announced by both state attorneys general and federal regulatory agencies. Though I maintained professional distance, Jordan recognized my value in covering other stories while our newsroom focused on the healthcare investigation. "Your series on education inequity showed you can handle complex systems reporting," he said during my performance review. "I'm promoting you to senior editor for social justice coverage." The promotion brought new responsibilities: managing a team of reporters developing long-term investigative strategies, and representing the Midwest voice at industry conferences. My confidence grew with each successful project, editorial decision, and public speaking engagement, developing muscles of authority long suppressed by my father's dominant presence. My relationship with Alex deepened during this period of professional growth and personal healing. After a year of dating, we decided to move in together, combining my book collection and Alex's architectural models into a spacious Ravenswood apartment with large windows and a small garden. "I love watching you blossom," Alex told me as we unpacked kitchen items. "You shine differently now, like you're lit from within rather than seeking external light." Dr. Rivera helped me recognize this transformation as well. "You're developing internal validation," she noted in our sessions. "Notice how your sense of worth no longer fluctuates based on others' approval." 9 months after the family reunion incident, Jackson entered the office visibly excited, stopping at my desk on his way to Jordan's office. "Bennett, we've got a bombshell for tomorrow's installment. An anonymous source provided internal documents directly implicating executives in directing the fraudulent schemes." His words sent a chill through me, though I maintained a neutral expression. These aren't just middle managers following orders. These are C-suite emails explicitly outlining how to maximize profits through the billing fraud. There's discussion of ROI on these strategies and congratulatory messages about creative compliance solutions. Later that afternoon, Jordan called me into a closed-door meeting with Jackson and our legal counsel. "The anonymous source specifically requested that you review these documents before publication," Jordan explained, sliding a folder across the desk. "They insisted you would understand their significance better than anyone." My heart raced as I opened the folder to find internal communications from my father's firm, including several emails authored by William Bennett himself. The documents outlined strategies for revenue optimization that were clearly fraudulent, using coded language to disguise unethical practices. Most damning were the timestamps and distribution lists. My father had continued promoting these strategies even after initial concerns were raised about potential patient harm. I looked up to find 3 pairs of eyes watching me intently. "Olivia," Jordan said gently. Is there something you need to tell us about your connection to this story? Taking a deep breath, I made the difficult professional disclosure. William, Bennett is my father. That's why I recused myself from this investigation from the beginning. Stunned silence followed before our legal counsel spoke. This creates significant complications. We need to disclose this relationship in the reporting. Hours of discussion followed, establishing protocols to maintain journalistic integrity while addressing the personal connection. The story would acknowledge my relationship to Bennett, but emphasize my complete recusal from the investigation. All editorial decisions would be documented with multiple approvers to demonstrate independence. As these discussions continued, my phone buzzed, with a text from my mother, the first in nearly 2 weeks. Please call immediately. Family emergency. The old guilt reflexively surfaced, but therapy had taught me to question such urgent summons. I stepped out to return the call. Mom, what's the emergency? Her voice sounded strained beyond its usual tension. That horrible article? They're saying terrible things about your father's company. He's barely slept. The board is meeting tomorrow, and there are rumors of government investigations. I waited for the actual emergency. The neighbors are asking questions. People at church are whispering. The foundation launch has been postponed indefinitely. I realized with sudden clarity that in my mother's world, this social fallout genuinely constituted an emergency. I'm sorry you're going through this stress, Mom. My response was compassionate but firm. But I'm not involved in the investigation or reporting. Her tone sharpened. But you work there. You must have known. How could you let this happen to your family? The familiar guilt triggers activated, but I recognize them now. Mom, what the company did was wrong. If they committed fraud, that's on them, not on the journalists reporting it. Her voice dropped to a whisper. He's your father, Olivia. Despite everything, doesn't that count for something? Before therapy, this appeal to family loyalty would have devastated me. Now I recognized it as emotional manipulation. It does count for something. It's why I recused myself completely from the investigation. She attempted another approach. We need to present a united front as a family. Your absence is causing speculation. I've been absent for 9 months, Mom, since Dad called me a loser in front of the entire family and no one, including you, said anything. The line went quiet except for her soft breathing. Finally, she spoke in a resigned voice I'd never heard before. I should have said something that day. I wanted to, but I just couldn't. This unprecedented acknowledgement of failure stunned me momentarily. That's between you and your therapist, Mom. I ended the call gently but firmly, protecting the boundaries I'd worked hard to establish. The following day, the Midwest Voice published the executive documentation with appropriate disclosures about my relationship and recusal. Major news outlets picked up the story. Business channels featured analysis of the company's plummeting. Stock value and industry publications questioned who else might be implicated in similar schemes. I maintained professional detachment at work while processing complex emotions in therapy. You're not responsible for your father's actions, Dr. Rivera reminded me. You didn't publish fraudulent billing strategies or pressure hospitals to implement them. You simply stepped aside and allowed journalism to function as intended. 3 days after the executive documentation story broke, Vanessa called again, her voice barely controlled. There are federal agents at Dad's office with subpoenas. Marcus's hospital is conducting a full audit of billing practices. Grandmother, Bennett had to increase her blood pressure medication. Each statement landed like an accusation. The family name you were so happy to abandon is being dragged through mud. Are you satisfied now? I recognized her anger as misplaced grief for the family mythology collapsing around her. This isn't about satisfaction, Vanessa. It's about accountability. Easy for you to say from the moral high ground, she snapped. You never fit the Bennett mold anyway, so you have nothing to lose. Her words, intended to wound, instead confirmed my therapist's insights about family dynamics. "You're right," I replied calmly. "I have nothing to lose because I've already lost it. Or rather, I never had it." Dad's approval was always conditional, and I finally stopped accepting those conditions. Her voice broke slightly. "Well, some of us still care about this family's reputation. And some of us care about patients being defrauded and potentially harmed by corporate strategies focused only on profit," I countered. "We clearly have different priorities." After the call ended, I sat in silent reflection, recognizing that my sister too was a product of our family system, her identity so thoroughly enmeshed with the Bennett success narrative that its unraveling threatened her very sense of self. While I grieved for her pain, I refused to accept responsibility for consequences that rightfully belonged to those who committed the fraud. That evening, Alex returned home to find me cooking dinner, an activity that had become therapeutic during my healing journey. "Tough day?" Alex asked, noticing my pensive expression. I shared the conversations with both my mother and sister, their attempts to pull me back into family guilt, and my mixed emotions about maintaining boundaries while witnessing their distress. "I'm proud of you," Alex said simply, helping chop vegetables. "Standing in your truth while showing compassion for their perspective, that's real strength." Later, curled together on the sofa, Alex asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Do you think you'll ever reconcile with them?" The question hung in the air as I considered the possibility. "I don't know. Reconciliation requires acknowledgement, accountability, and changed behavior. I haven't seen evidence of any of those yet." With Alex's steady presence beside me, I realized the family I'd created through friendship and love provided the security and acceptance I'd spent decades seeking from people constitutionally unable to provide it. 3 months after Jackson's initial exposé, my father's company faced the full consequences of their actions. Federal investigations confirmed systematic fraud across multiple healthcare organizations. Class action lawsuits were filed on behalf of patients overcharged for services. The company's stock lost 60% of its value, and several board members resigned. Industry publications that once celebrated William Bennett as a visionary now analyzed his downfall in detailed postmortems. Through it all, I maintained professional boundaries, focusing on my editorial responsibilities and mentoring younger journalists. My team launched an ambitious project highlighting community-led solutions to educational disparities, featuring voices typically excluded from policy discussions. The series attracted attention from education advocates and policymakers, demonstrating that impact journalism didn't require sensationalism or scandal. Personally, I continued therapy while developing new aspects of myself long suppressed under family expectations. I enrolled in a weekend photography workshop, reconnecting with visual creativity abandoned in adolescence. I joined a community garden, finding unexpected joy in nurturing plants and connecting with neighbors. Most significantly, I established a mentorship program for young journalists from underrepresented backgrounds, creating opportunities I wished someone had offered me when I was starting out. The program quickly gained industry recognition, with participating students publishing impactful stories and securing internships at major publications. At my next performance review, Jordan nominated me for the Emerging Editorial Leadership Award, a prestigious industry recognition. "Your vision for advocacy journalism combined with rigorous ethical standards has transformed our coverage," he wrote in the nomination. "More importantly, your mentorship approach has created a pipeline of diverse talent bringing fresh perspectives to our newsroom." Alex supported these professional developments while our personal relationship deepened. Moving in together revealed new dimensions of compatibility and occasional friction points that we navigated with honest communication. Unlike the conflict avoidance modeled in my childhood home, we developed healthy disagreement practices, learning to address issues directly without personal attacks or silent treatment. One Sunday morning, as we planned a kitchen renovation over coffee, my phone displayed an unfamiliar number with my hometown area code. Assuming it might be a former classmate or distant relative, I answered casually. "Ms. Bennett? This is Massachusetts, General Hospital. Your father was admitted 2 hours ago following a heart attack. Your mother asked us to contact family members." The news hit with unexpected force, memories and emotions colliding as the nurse provided details about his condition, stable but serious, requiring surgery and extended recovery. After ending the call, I sat motionless, coffee cooling forgotten, as Alex watched with concern. "My father had a heart attack," I explained, my voice sounding distant even to my own ears. "They expect him to recover, but it was serious." Alex sat beside me, a solid presence without pressure. "What do you want to do?" The question echoed in my mind as I considered my options. After 9 months of no contact, did I have any obligation? To visit? Would my presence help or create additional stress? What would I even say after everything that had transpired? I called Dr. Rivera for an emergency session, needing professional guidance for this unexpected development. "There's no single right answer here," she advised during our video call. "This is about what feels authentic to your healing journey, not about meeting others' expectations." After careful consideration, I decided to visit the hospital, not from obligation or guilt, but from compassion and a desire for closure aligned with my own values. The journey back to Massachusetts felt surreal. The familiar landscape viewed through eyes transformed by months of therapy and self-discovery. Alex offered to accompany me, but this was a boundary I needed to navigate alone. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and artificial air freshener, fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows as I followed signs to the cardiac care unit. Mom sat in the waiting area, looking smaller and older than I remembered, her designer outfit somehow incongruous. In the utilitarian setting, she spotted me before I could prepare, rising shakily. "Olivia, you came." Her surprise revealed low expectations, another painful realization about our relationship. Of course I came. The simple response felt true without revealing the complex deliberation behind my decision. She attempted a hug that felt mechanical, decades of emotional distance not erased by crisis. Marcus appeared from the corridor, his surgical scrubs exchanged for casual clothes that still somehow looked formal on his rigid frame. His expression tightened upon seeing me. "I didn't expect to see you here." The accusation beneath the statement was clear. "Dad's stable. They completed a triple bypass. He'll be in recovery for several hours before visitors are allowed." Vanessa arrived minutes later, her shock at my presence less concealed than Marcus's. "Well, look who decided family matters after all." Her voice dripped with sarcasm even, as exhaustion shadowed her eyes. The tension among us drew curious glances from other waiting families. Rather than engage with hostility, I chose compassionate detachment. "I came because it felt like the right thing to do. I'm not here to argue about the past." Hours passed in uncomfortable silence, interrupted by occasional medical updates. When the doctor finally appeared to announce we could visit briefly, 1 or 2 at a time, an awkward negotiation ensued about visitation order. "Olivia should go last," Vanessa suggested with pointed emphasis. "Since she's been distant longest." Mom looked between us with visible discomfort before Marcus unexpectedly intervened. "Mom and Vanessa first, then me, then Olivia. 10 minutes each, no overlapping." His tone permitted no argument, reverting to the decisive older brother role of our childhood. When my turn finally came, I entered the recovery room with measured steps, unprepared for the impact of seeing my formidable father reduced to the vulnerable patient before me. Tubes and wires connected him to monitoring equipment, his complexion gray beneath the oxygen mask, his commanding presence diminished by hospital gown and medical vulnerability. His eyes opened as I approached, recognition followed by confusion in his gaze. "Olivia?" His voice rasped weakly, so unlike the authoritative tone that had dominated my childhood. "I didn't expect you. I wanted to make sure you were okay," I replied simply, remaining at a comfortable distance from the bed. No dramatic reconciliation scene followed, no tearful apologies or profound revelations. Instead, we engaged in careful small talk about his surgery, his doctors, the recovery, timeline ahead. Neither of us mentioned the family reunion incident, the months of silence, or the investigations into his company. As my allotted time ended, he said, "Your mother says you received some journalism award nomination." The statement contained, "No congratulations, just acknowledgement." "Yes, for editorial leadership." A slight nod was his only response before fatigue overtook him, eyes closing as I quietly exited. In the corridor, I encountered my mother waiting anxiously. "Are you staying?" "At the house?" she asked, hope evident in her voice. "No, I have a hotel reservation nearby. I'll be returning to Chicago tomorrow." Disappointment creased her features, but she didn't protest. "Will you at least come for dinner before you leave?" The invitation surprised me. "Just you and me," she added quickly. "The others are staying at the house, but they have commitments this evening." The unexpected opportunity for one-on-one conversation with my mother felt significant. "Yes, I'd like that." Before leaving the hospital, I stopped in the chapel, not for prayer, but for quiet reflection. Seeing my father's physical vulnerability hadn't erased the emotional harm or suddenly created the father-daughter relationship I'd longed for throughout childhood. What it had done was humanize him, allowing me to see him as a flawed person rather than the godlike figure who had dominated my self-perception for decades. This wasn't forgiveness exactly, but perhaps the beginning of something equally important: indifference that replaced both desperate longing for approval and bitter resentment of its absence. Sitting in that quiet space, I realized I no longer needed William Bennett to recognize my worth because I had finally recognized it myself. 6 months after my father's heart attack, major developments reshaped the Bennett family landscape. His company reached a settlement with federal authorities, agreeing to pay substantial penalties while implementing comprehensive compliance reforms. The financial impact was significant but not ruinous. The Bennetts remained wealthy by most standards, though their days of extravagant excess had ended. My father stepped down as CEO, taking an advisory role with reduced responsibilities during his ongoing recovery. The family downsized from their sprawling estate to a still impressive but more modest home in the same exclusive neighborhood. Throughout these changes, I maintained limited contact, occasional text exchanges with my mother, and brief civil conversations with my siblings when necessary. My focus remained on my flourishing career and personal growth in Chicago. The Midwest. Voice continued gaining national recognition for impactful reporting, with my editorial leadership style attracting industry attention. The mentorship program expanded to include partnerships with journalism schools, creating pathways for diverse voices to enter the profession. Most unexpectedly, I received notification that I'd won the National Editorial Excellence Award, AII, prestigious recognition that would be presented at a ceremony in New York. "You have to let me come with you," Alex insisted when I shared the news, now planning our wedding after a rooftop proposal overlooking Lake Michigan. "I want to witness this moment." The ceremony itself exceeded my expectations, gathering journalism luminaries from across the country in a celebration of exceptional reporting and editorial vision. Seated among respected colleagues with Alex beside me, I felt a profound sense of belonging entirely separate from family validation. When my name was announced, the walk to the podium felt surreal yet grounded, each step representing the journey from seeking external approval to recognizing my intrinsic worth. "Journalism at its best amplifies voices that power would prefer to silence," I stated in my acceptance speech. "This award honors not just my work, but the communities who trusted us with their stories." As applause filled the hall, I noticed a familiar figure in the back row. My mother, elegant in understated navy, watching with an expression I couldn't quite interpret. After the ceremony, she approached hesitantly, offering a single white rose. "Congratulations, Olivia. Your speech was beautiful." Her presence at this professional milestone stunned me. "Mom, I had no idea you were coming." She glanced down. Briefly, "I didn't tell you because I feared you might ask me not to come. But I wanted to see this." After introducing her to Alex and several colleagues, we found a quiet corner for conversation. "You seem different," I observed, noting subtle changes in her demeanor beyond the expected aging from stress. "I've been seeing someone," she admitted, then quickly clarified. "A therapist, I mean. After your father's heart attack, I realized I needed help navigating everything." This revelation astonished me, therapy having been practically taboo in our family culture. "It's been illuminating," she continued, "and often painful. I've had to confront my role in enabling behaviors that hurt you and your siblings, especially you." She twisted her wedding ring nervously. "I failed to protect you when I should have. I chose peace over justice, comfort over truth." Her unprecedented acknowledgement left me momentarily speechless. "I don't expect forgiveness," she added quickly, "but I wanted you to know that I see it now, even if it's too late." We talked for over an hour, connecting more authentically than we had throughout my entire childhood. Though careful not to overpromise, she extended an invitation to another family gathering. "Your grandmother's 95th birthday is next month. It would mean a lot if you would consider attending. With Alex, of course," she added, recognizing the importance of my chosen family. The invitation triggered immediate apprehension, memories of the disastrous reunion still fresh despite the intervening time. "I'll think about it," I promised, unwilling to commit immediately to re-entering a space associated with such profound hurt. Back in Chicago, I discussed the invitation extensively with Dr. Rivera. "What would attending this gathering provide for you?" she asked, helping me examine my motivations rather than defaulting to old patterns of obligation. "Not reconciliation?" "Exactly," I reflected. "But perhaps closure, or at least the opportunity to engage with my family as the person I've become rather than the person they expected me to be." After careful consideration, Alex and I traveled to Massachusetts for the birthday celebration, my anxiety partially offset by having my partner's grounding presence beside me. The family home, while still impressive, lacked the intimidating grandeur of the previous estate. Arriving at the newly downsized Bennett residence felt like entering an alternate reality, familiar elements rearranged into unfamiliar patterns. Grandmother Bennett held court in the living room, remarkably vibrant despite her advanced age, receiving birthday wishes with regal graciousness. My siblings' reception proved chilly despite their outward civility. Marcus managed a cursory handshake, while asking blandly about that online news site you work for, deliberately diminishing my professional accomplishments. Vanessa remained more overtly hostile, her greeting barely concealing resentment about the family's reduced circumstances. "I see success has treated you well," she remarked, eyeing my modest but elegant jewelry, a wedding gift from Alex's parents. "Good to know someone in the family is thriving." My father's entrance created palpable tension, his physical appearance dramatically altered by illness and recovery. Thinner and slightly stooped, he moved with careful deliberation, conserving energy in a way that would have been unthinkable before his heart attack. His eyes met mine across the room, acknowledgement rather than warmth in his nod. Midway through the celebration, as conversations flowed around the catered buffet that had replaced the formal dinner service of previous gatherings, my father approached, where Alex and I stood conversing with a cousin. "Olivia, might I have a word with you in the study?" The familiar command had transformed into something closer to a request, his tone lacking its former absolute authority. I glanced at Alex, who squeezed my hand supportively. "I'll be fine," I assured before following my father to the wood-paneled room that had housed so many childhood reprimands and disappointed evaluations. The study, like its owner, had diminished. Family photos and achievement mementos now crowded onto fewer shelves. My father settled heavily into his leather chair, gesturing toward the visitor's seat opposite his desk. "Your mother tells me you won some important journalism award." "The National Editorial Excellence Award, yes." "Well, congratulations." The words sounded unpracticed, as though he rarely used them. Silence stretched between us, decades of unspoken resentments and expectations filling the space more effectively than conversation. Finally, he cleared his throat. I wanted to clear the air about certain misunderstandings between us. Not an apology, but a deflection, minimizing harm as misunderstandings rather than deliberate cruelty. The old anger flared briefly before therapeutic tools engaged, allowing me to respond from strength rather than wounded reaction. "I don't think we had misunderstandings, Dad. I understood perfectly when you called me a loser in front of our entire family, just as I understood when you dismissed my career, my achievements, and my entire personhood throughout my life." His expression tightened defensively. That was an unfortunate choice of words during a stressful time. Perhaps I was too focused on legacy and traditional definitions of success. Perhaps. The non-committal qualifier ignited something within me, a clarity that burned away remaining hesitation. "Let me be direct, since we've never had an honest conversation in my entire life. You emotionally abused me throughout my childhood and into adulthood. You established conditional love based on achievement within narrow parameters that deliberately excluded my natural talents and interests. You actively undermined my confidence and self-worth whenever I showed signs of defining success on my own terms." His face paled slightly, unused to being addressed with such directness. "That's an extreme characterization of ordinary parental expectations." "No, it's an accurate description of emotional abuse disguised as parenting. Ordinary parents don't call their children losers. They don't systematically ignore achievements that don't align with their personal preferences. They don't withhold love and approval as manipulation tactics." My voice remained steady, therapy having transformed raw pain into articulate understanding. "The irony is that while you were dismissing my little online stories, my work was actually making positive impact in people's lives, while your company was systematically defrauding vulnerable patients." He flinched visibly at this direct reference to his professional disgrace. "Those allegations were greatly exaggerated. The settlement was a business decision, not an admission of wrongdoing." "That's between you and your conscience," I replied, unwilling to debate corporate malfeasance when the personal wound remained unaddressed. "What matters for this conversation is that I no longer need your approval or validation. I've built a life and career I'm proud of, surrounded by people who value me for who I actually am, rather than who they demand I become." Silence fell again, his expression unreadable as he studied me across the desk that had once symbolized his absolute authority. "You've changed," he finally offered, surprise evident in his tone. "I've healed," I corrected. "There's a difference." Something shifted in his eyes, not quite understanding, but perhaps the beginning of recognition. "For what it's worth," he said slowly, "I was wrong about your capabilities. What you've accomplished in your field is significant. Not an apology, not reconciliation, but the closest acknowledgement of error I'd ever received from William Bennett. Thank you for saying that." I stood, signaling the end of our conversation. "But I need you to understand something important. I no longer measure my worth by your assessment. Your opinion of me, positive or negative, no longer defines me." As I turned to leave, he spoke again. "Will we see you at Christmas?" The question contained vulnerability I'd never before witnessed from him. "I don't know," I answered honestly. That depends on whether this family can interact with me as I am, not as you wish I would be. I won't return to patterns that damaged me. Walking back to the birthday celebration, I felt neither triumph nor despair, but something more valuable. Freedom from the desperate need for paternal approval that had shaped my earliest memories and driven my major life decisions. Whatever relationship might eventually develop with my family would be built on reality rather than performance, honesty rather than pretense. Alex met me with questioning eyes, and I squeezed his hand reassuringly. It was just a conversation, not a miracle, but an honest one perhaps for the first time. 1 year after the confrontation with my father, my life had transformed so completely that memories of the desperate approval seeker I'd once been seemed to belong to someone else entirely. Spring in Chicago brought renewal literal and metaphorical. Trees along Lake Michigan budding into vibrant green as my professional and personal life similarly flourished. The Midwest Voice had promoted me to executive editor for special projects, a position created specifically to leverage my vision for journalism that combined rigorous reporting with community engagement. Our mentorship program for underrepresented journalists had expanded nationally, with graduates now working at major publications across the country. Most personally satisfying was launching a storytelling initiative amplifying voices from communities typically excluded from national conversation, allowing me to combine my journalist skill with my natural empathy and creativity. Alex and I married in a lakeside ceremony surrounded by chosen family, my journalism colleagues and Chicago friends creating a celebration defined by authentic joy rather than social obligation. My mother attended alone, our relationship having evolved into something cautious but genuine through consistent therapy on both sides. My siblings declined the invitation, their identities still too enmeshed with family mythology to accept my different path. My father sent a surprisingly thoughtful card and gift, but respected my boundaries by not attending, a consideration that would have been unimaginable 2 years earlier. Our new home in Rogers Park reflected our combined sensibilities, Alex's architectural aesthetic harmonizing with my love of color and texture. Bookshelves overflowed with literature and art references, walls displayed photography from local artists, and the small garden bloomed with native plants that attracted butterflies and hummingbirds. Most evenings found us on the back deck discussing our days, planning weekend adventures, or simply enjoying companionable silence as twilight settled over the neighborhood. My mother visited Chicago occasionally, our relationship evolving through careful conversations and gradual rebuilding of trust. Her ongoing therapy had revealed decades of suppressed awareness about family dysfunction, unlocking grief about her passive role in enabling harmful patterns. I always told myself I was keeping peace, she admitted during a visit to the Art Institute. But I was really just avoiding conflict at your expense. These honest exchanges, while sometimes painful, created possibility for connection based on reality rather than performance. By contrast, interactions with my siblings remained distant but civil, occasional text messages marking birthdays or professional milestones. Their identities remained more closely tied to family mythology and paternal approval, making my independence both threatening and incomprehensible to their worldview. Marcus maintained his successful surgical practice but struggled with burnout, symptoms he refused to acknowledge, working punishing hours that left little room for personal fulfillment. Vanessa made partner at her law firm, but confided to our mother that achievement had brought competence rather than satisfaction, the key. Goalposts of success constantly moving beyond reach. Most surprising was the gradual evolution in my father's communication. His initial awkward emails about business news or weather reports gradually shifted toward genuine inquiry about my work and occasional sharing of articles he thought might interest me. During a rare phone conversation marking his announcement, he acknowledged, the healthcare expose, while personally difficult, ultimately forced necessary industry reforms. Coming from William Bennett, this oblique admission of benefit from personal downfall approached miraculous. I harbored no illusions about dramatic family reconciliation or movie-worthy group hugs. The Bennett family system had been too profoundly dysfunctional, the damage too sustained for simple resolution. What emerged instead was something more realistic and ultimately more valuable. Carefully constructed adult relationships based on current reality rather than shared mythology. The mentorship program became my most personally meaningful work, allowing me to support young journalists navigating industry challenges with particular attention to those lacking family resources or connections. "You've created something revolutionary here," noted a Columbia Journalism School professor during a program evaluation. "These mentees aren't just learning professional skills. They're developing authentic voice without sacrificing integrity." On a personal Monday evening in early spring, I settled at my desk to complete journal reflections, a practice begun in therapy that had become essential to maintaining perspective. Looking back through entries spanning 2 years of transformation, clear patterns emerged: the gradual quieting of my father's critical voice in my mind, the strengthening of my authentic perspective, the development of boundaries that protected without isolating. What struck me most profoundly was how liberation from seeking paternal approval had unlocked energy previously consumed by that futile pursuit. Without constantly attempting to prove my worth to someone constitutionally unable to recognize it, I discovered abundant capacity for meaningful work, genuine connection, and creative expression. The true epiphany, recorded in these private pages, was recognizing that walking away from my father's conditional love wasn't primarily an act of rejection, but of self-preservation. The greatest gift I gave myself wasn't confronting him in his study that day, satisfying though that had been, but rather the daily practice of defining success through internal alignment rather than external validation. The family story I inherited portrayed achievement as the prerequisite for worthiness, value as something earned rather than intrinsic. The story I now embraced recognized that human worth exists independent of accomplishment, that love contingent on performance isn't actually love at all. This fundamental shift in perspective transformed not just my family relationships, but every aspect of life, from professional ambitions to romantic partnership to civic engagement. My phone chimed with a text from Alex. "Meeting running late. Pick up dinner on my way home. Love you just because." Those final 3 words encapsulated everything my childhood lacked and my adulthood had finally secured. Love offered without conditions. Acceptance not requiring performance. Belonging, based on authentic self rather than achievement. This, ultimately, was the lesson hard-won through family rejection and subsequent healing. True strength emerges not from securing others' approval, but from defining your own worth independent of external validation. Sometimes the greatest act of self-preservation requires walking away from those who cannot see your value, creating space for those who recognize and celebrate your authentic self. For any of you watching who recognize yourselves in my story, who feel trapped in relationships that demand performance rather than offering acceptance, please know that another life is possible. The journey isn't easy, healing rarely is, but the freedom waiting on the other side is worth every difficult step. Do you have family members who've only offered conditional love? Have you ever had to walk away from toxic relationships to preserve your sense of self? Share your experiences in the comments below, and remember to subscribe if this story resonated with you. Your story matters too, and perhaps sharing it here might help someone else find courage to begin their own healing journey. Thank you for witnessing mine, and I wish you strength and authenticity in writing your own.